I appreciate everyone taking the time to be with us and giving your focus to an incredibly important task for our state. Okay, I think we want to start. I'm Tim Berry, if you don't know me or haven't met me, and one of the things I want to remind everyone of is that this is a public meeting, so it's being live streamed and viewed on YouTube. So the point of that is to let you know when you're speaking to use the little microphones in front of you so that the folks who are watching elsewhere can hear you. Just make sure the little light is green, and that way they can hear what you're saying. Hopefully we're going to get out of here around 12:30 today. We'll take a little break halfway through, so please plan accordingly. And then hopefully you have also downloaded all of the meeting materials ahead of time and had a chance to review those. If not, get with Eiler and she can help you get access to that moving forward. But hopefully you have that in front of you and have had time to review those materials. Also, if you remember from one of our spring meeting, Commissioner Thomas asked us to form 3 task groups around federal legislation because there's some important issues that impact the work that we do. And we got a survey back in May asking us if we would be interested in being part of those task groups. And we did have a few of you sign up for that, and I appreciate that. For those who did not sign up, or maybe you're new to the board, Eiler will send that information back out next week so that you can review that again, look at those 3 different task group options, and then hopefully you'll be part of one of those moving forward. So thank you for those who have already signed up for that. If you haven't, please review based on Eiler's email next week, and hopefully you can help weigh in on some federal topics. Okay, what else do I want to talk about? We have some new member news to share. Policy Director for Governor Lee, Tony Nicknajad, has been with us for, I think, the length of my tenure here, and he is going into the public sector with a new exciting role. So, Tony, if you wouldn't mind, we would love to have you come up here and just recognize your service with a plaque.
All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you
So much. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Appreciate Tony's service and representation of the governor's office. And I don't know that they're here, but I also want to recognize a few more board members who will be stepping off. Ann Hatcher has been a longstanding member of the board. Barry Ray and Rick Isaacson also will be leaving the board. So if you get a chance to reach out to them through the connection, I'm sure they would welcome your best wishes, and congratulations on their next steps. We have some new members we want to welcome. So replacing Tony as Governor Lee's new policy director is Michael Hendricks. Michael, if you'll raise your hand so everybody can see. All right. And just want to welcome you to the board and happy to have you here and look forward to working with you as well. And then the Tennessee Department of Education has a new commissioner, Lizette Reynolds. Not sure if she's here, but she will continue to have a designee of Deborah Knoll. And is Deborah here today? Deborah? So thank you for continuing to be part of this and serving a new commissioner. I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that. And then we have Linda Botch. Linda, welcome. Haven't had a chance to meet you yet, but welcome to the board, and I appreciate your willingness to serve. So if you haven't met her, please take some time to know her. She is a HR business advisor for Rocket City HR Consulting, so we can talk HR later on too. And then there's just a lot going on, right? We have Commissioner Denise Thomas also has some exciting news because in addition to the great work she does here, she is the chair of the National Association of Workforce Development State Liaisons. So she does a lot of great work, not only for our state, but to represent us among the other states. So congratulate Commissioner Thomas on that exciting new step and really making sure that our great work gets shown off to the rest of the states is really what I like about it. So, okay, that's enough talking for now. Eiler, you want to give us a roll call and make sure we have quorum?
Absolutely. Good morning. As I call your name, please use a microphone to confirm your attendance audibly. If you are a member of a local workforce development board, please state the local board. If you are representing by proxy and your name is not called, please state your name for the record. Natalie Alvarez.
Present.
Martha Axford.
Present.
Brandy Faust for State Senator Paul Bailey. Assistant Commissioner Jay Baker.
Present.
Marshall Graves, proxy for Joe Baker.
Present.
Jason Bates.
Present.
Tim Berry.
Present.
Joey Barnett for State Representative Clark Boyd. Linda Botch.
Present.
Deputy Commissioner Sherelle Campbell Street for Commissioner Clarence Carter. Billy Dykes.
Present.
Michelle Falcone.
Present.
Ben Ferguson.
Present. Southwest.
Bill Godwin.
Present.
Marshall Graves.
Present from Southeast.
J. Paul Jackson.
Present.
Mayor Tim Kelly.
Present.
Director Sharita Allen for Commissioner Stuart McWhorter.
Present.
Policy Director Michael Hendricks for Governor Bill Lee.
Present.
Mayor Mike Pogriba. Kim Hitchcock, proxy for Stuart Price.
Present.
Jason Schmidt.
Colby Swan, proxy.
Assistant Commissioner Deborah Knoll for Commissioner Lizette Reynolds.
Present.
Commissioner Denise Thomas.
Present.
Jeff Vance.
Present.
Marshall Graves, proxy for Kevin Vaughn.
Present.
Ron Wade.
Present, Greater Memphis.
Assistant Commissioner Kevin Wright.
Present.
As a reminder, for any votes during this meeting, you must recuse yourself if there's a conflict of interest. Chairman Berry, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Eiler, and again, thank you for taking time to be here. Let's quickly talk about the minutes from the last meeting and get that piece of business out of the way. I trust that you have downloaded those from the last meeting, had a chance to review them. Do I hear a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
Motion.
I saw Ron Wade. Okay, Ron's going to second. And who motioned? I'm sorry.
Ben Ferguson.
Okay, thank you, Ben. All right, any discussion about the minutes from the last meeting? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved as presented. Thank you. I'm going to ask Commissioner Thomas to introduce a guest that we have with us, and this is an important guest because a lot of the work that he's doing is in line with the workforce needed to get that work done. So, Commissioner, why don't you introduce our guest?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is with great pleasure that I introduce to you Butch Ely, who serves as our Deputy Governor and Commissioner of Transportation for the state of Tennessee. In this role, Butch serves as a top advisor to Governor Bill Lee, manages the Tennessee Department of Transportation, and coordinates infrastructure investments throughout the state. Prior to this role, Commissioner Ely served as Tennessee's Chief Financial Officer, and before that, he served as Governor Lee's Chief Operating Officer. Before joining Governor Lee's administration, Butch was the founder and CEO of Infrastructure Corporation of America, one of the nation's premier infrastructure asset management companies. And personally, I would like to thank Deputy Governor Ely for his support to this department and this work. So, ladies and gentlemen, Commissioner Ely.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning. Good morning. If it's okay, I'm gonna kind of step out here if it's all right. Is it hot enough for everybody? You got it cool in here, so that's nice. I'm here today to talk about the Modernization Act, and I really want to make this as informal as possible, as interactive as possible. And so I've got a few slides that we can talk about, bits and pieces, but really I'm more interested in really getting into discussion and questions from you as to how the Modernization Act interacts with workforce, and really just kind of also timeline and other things that you may be interested in. So much more interested in hearing from you than standing up here talking. Couple of things I do want to say. Number one, Commissioner, we've had the opportunity to work together in those other roles before I came over to transportation, and I will tell you that we've got a number of great public servants in the state of Tennessee, and this is one of them. And she has done a tremendous job, and now to have her in this role as commissioner is wonderful, and so thank you for serving in this way. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't say something to everybody at this table, because when some of you've heard me talk about the challenges I think before us in Tennessee, infrastructure being one of them. But I put infrastructure, I put workforce right up there with infrastructure. And in some cases, I mean, we've done a really good job with it, especially transportation side of infrastructure. We've got a lot of work to do with broadband. We got a lot of work to do with water, wastewater, to get our whole state to the place that it needs to be. But we've done a good job historically on transportation. But we're going to talk a little more today about kind of where we have found ourselves as a result of some of the really unprecedented good things that are happening in Tennessee. But I want to make sure to thank each one of you for serving on this important board, because we really are with what you do, what we do. I'm interested in people who are with us today. They're not. How many of you, show of hands, are in a government position in some way? Raise your hand. Quite a few. Yeah. And how many are private sector? Just show of hand. Yeah. So that's one of the things I like about what we're doing here, is that it is one of the best boards, I think, that combines private sector influence, private sector real life with our government partners, and so very important with that. So I think what I want to do here in a few minutes is talk about kind of the elements or components of the bill that passed in this past legislature on the Modernization Act that the governor introduced. And then I want to talk a little bit about what we're trying to do as far as workforce development in another state department, our department, so that because we're trying to do some things a little bit different than what we've done so far in other departments. And so mainly when I think about where we are, many of you have heard me say that when it comes to transportation in Tennessee, we are at a very critical point and juncture in this state. And so we have so many good things going on in Tennessee. All of I'm not gonna run through them because all of you know them, but 137,000 new jobs over the last few years. We've got the Blue Oval. The Blue Oval project is a game changer for the state, but especially West Tennessee. I know there's a lot of work going on there, and so that's something we could discuss, especially as it relates to transportation and transit. So we've got all these good things going on, but everybody in this room knows that with opportunities come challenges, and those challenges are very real. And I think, from my standpoint, if we want to continue to be able to attract, not just the Blue Ovals. I mean, we attract and we keep companies in Tennessee all the time that help our entire citizenry of Tennessee to grow and prosper. And so it's not just new companies, it's taking care of our existing companies, which is an important part of what we do with ECD. But if we're going to keep those companies here, and if we're going to keep attracting the kind of new jobs that we need in Tennessee, then we've got to keep investing in infrastructure. It's absolutely near the top of the list, if not the top. It's top for me, but I know that there's a lot of other things going on. And I would say, similarly, if we're going to be able in rural areas to allow our young people to grow up and stay and live and bring up their families and stay and work anywhere in a nearby vicinity, that we've got to invest in infrastructure in Tennessee. And so, and the last piece I would say to that, which is Tennessee is in a unique place in the country because we are such a major freight corridor running east to west, and we've done congestion studies over the last few years, which is one of the things that led to the Modernization Act and the idea of choice lanes in Tennessee. And what we found through we did studies in all 4 of our major urban areas, and we found congestion, believe it or not. Yeah. Is that a surprise to anybody in this room? No. And what we found is that if we didn't do something now to start addressing what that looks like, then a typical a typical 30-minute commute from south of Nashville or west of Chattanooga was going to go from like 30 minutes to an hour or an hour and a half in the next few years. And so the governor felt like we couldn't kick the can down the road, and that we needed to step up and try to address that issue. If you look at, I'm going to kind of jump around here, but this is in 2012. This is a visual of our long haul truck traffic in 2012. This is our long haul truck traffic in 2040 projected, and you know, Tennessee's not far from being solid red. And I'm telling you, I was down in Memphis a couple of weeks ago. The amount of freight that we move through Tennessee and we move through Memphis is astronomical, and it is so imperative that we address. And so we've got all these interstates in Tennessee that were built in the 70s, 80s, that were built as two-lane roads that are still in the same alignment they were back in that day. And if we don't start, so part of my message is that we know we've got an urban problem, but we also know we've got a rural and suburban problem, and so we've got to attack it on both sides, and so that's the reason the governor presented the Modernization Act. So let me jump in and hit kind of the three major components of the Modernization Act, and then answer some questions. So one of the things that everybody in this room knows is that we have been in a pay-as-you-go financial pay model for some people don't know that we have had highway bonds in the past. In the 60s, we did it routinely. We paid off the last of those bonds several years ago, and so Governor McWhorter and then Governor Alexander after him really doubled down on our pay-as-you-go system, which has worked great for us. But when I came in, and I recognized, and really, Governor, I've been talking about this since he came into office, is that when we start projecting out, like these slides showed about freight and what we have seen on congestion, that we needed to relook at our ability and funding model to be able to get more infrastructure investment in Tennessee. And so what we recognized is that we were the only state in the South, and one of the only states in the country that doesn't have the ability for the state to do. We didn't have authorization to do public-private partnerships. We actually have it now for transit and highways, and so there's a tremendous opportunity there to partner with the private sector to be able to get that private sector investment on these choice lanes, which I'm gonna show a quick video here in a minute that describes it, and then we'll talk more about questions for that. But the authorization that we received this year in the legislature allows us to do public-private partnerships for the first time, which is another way of saying that the private sector will design, build, finance, operate, and maintain these choice lanes so that the state of Tennessee does not have to make that entire investment itself. So if you're Mayor Kelly down looking at the backup of Moccasin Bend, and it's a $1 billion project, our entire budget annually, based off of the funds that we have traditionally received from the gas tax, both federal and state, is around $1.2 billion, of which kind of right off the top, we spend around 500 or so on state of good repair, because state of Tennessee, and I'm a big believer in this as well, is that we first must maintain what we have, because we know how bad potholes are. That's just an example, but our bridges, also most of which were built in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, are now 50, 60, 75 years old. So we're having to invest more and more in bridges to keep them safe. And so so of that 1.2, 500 to 600 comes off the top as state of good repair, leaving us around 600 or so, 125 or so per region in the state, from Memphis up to Upper East. So we could spend that walking around this building and looking outside, literally. And so the only way that we could continue to do what we need to do was to look at options. And at the time, increasing gas tax not an option. Raising taxes is not an option, and debt is not an option. So this public-private partnership was a way to be able to get that investment. And so the way this works is whatever that project ends up being, or those projects ends up being, let's say it's a $1 billion project, because these projects, our biggest project to date in the state is about $180 million, which was down there on 75 recently. And so to really solve what we're talking about doing here, it's going to take much more than piecemealing these little projects at a couple of $100 million, and it takes us forever. Honestly, it just takes us forever. And so what we've tried to do with the Modernization Act is to give us the vehicle through public-private partnership to get private sector involved in financing these projects, where we could take those dollars, invest those dollars that we now have available to us in other projects, and that we will also do a major interstate expansion in each of our 4 regions as well, right off the bat. That would be a bigger project than we've ever done in each of those regions for interstate expansion. The second piece of that puzzle really has to do with alternative delivery, has to do with timeline. Our average timeline for projects is 15 years to deliver a project. All right, I'm not even going to go into how that makes me feel. I mean, so we're committed now to what gets started gets done. The problem I probably heard the most since taking this role at TDEC has been, we started the project, I said, well, when did you start it? Well, 1989 right? And we're still sitting here. So the way we used to, there's kind of 3 major steps. You do your design and engineering, then you do your right-of-way, then you do your construction. Well, you know, what was happening is we plugged in numbers. We would start and we would only fund design, and we wouldn't fund right away or construction. And so then a few years later, when there was enough yelling and screaming, then, okay, well, let's do right away. And of course, that takes several years. And then we still hadn't done construction. And so by the time we get around to construction, the cost is twice. Cost is twice what, actually more than that in many cases, what we projected back in 1989 or whenever the project was started. And so one of the things that we're trying, which is not going to be easy for a lot of us, especially public officials, as we look at it, because what's happened is, you know, we wanted to get a project going so we could say we got a project going. And, but I think it's much more important to deliver a project than it is to start a project. And so what we're trying to do is to say, from now on, we're gonna deliver what gets done. And if we know as a department, we're gonna program these dollars, which I'll talk about in a minute. We're gonna program these dollars to where we know when we start that we've got a stream of revenue, that we can deliver that project, and that we know that we'll come right after it with right-of-way, and we'll come right after that with construction. So we won't have as many projects out there in the funnel, but we will get out what starts in the funnel and gets out the bottom. So so delivery is a major piece of this. And then the last piece is simply parity between electric and gas vehicles. So, you know, we kind of back to number one, but we got a big issue in this country because our gas tax obviously is not going. We hadn't done anything since in the federal gas tax since '93. We did raise the state gas tax in 2017. But we did not index it, and so literally the dollars that we increased are already have been absorbed in the increased cost of construction and other things. So as a result of that, we know that we've got a totally unsustainable current revenue stream with gas tax to be able to generate what needs to be generated for that. And so what we did is go in and say, well, what does a gas car generate today? Got UT to do a study, it's $274, and we said, okay, well, let's try to get our gas, our electric vehicles on par with what our electric vehicles pay. It's not, it's long term, it'll make a huge difference. Today, we've got less than 2% of our fleet as electric, but in the next few years, that's going to change, and we're going to have more and more electric vehicles. And so, I think everybody is pretty supportive in paying their way for those kind of improvements. So, that's those three things. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the choice lanes, because that probably was the biggest thing that people were interested in. How's it work? Who pays? How much do they pay? How's that going to work? And so these choice lanes are something that the governor asked me to do is go to other states that have already been where we're headed. Texas, Florida, Virginia, Georgia, figure out what they are doing to be able to get people where they need to be. You know, if, like I said when we started, y'all can do your job and we can create this workforce, but if they can't get to work, then that's a problem. And so we gotta work together to do this together. So Matt, are you ready for this? All right. Check this out.
We are fortunate to live in a state with so much going for us, a direct result of our sound economic policies, high quality of life, and ranking as one of the lowest taxed states in the country. While this yields economic opportunity, it also presents traffic congestion challenges in urban areas. Sitting in traffic isn't how any of us want to spend our time. Building choice lanes in congested urban areas would help reduce traffic congestion, provide more reliable trip times, and help you get to where you need to be on time. You can make it home for dinner, to a soccer game, a doctor's appointment, or to work. Service vehicles can make that one extra house call to bring in more business, and emergency vehicles get to emergencies faster. It's their choice to drive on these additional roads. Choice lanes have been successful across the country. States like Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Virginia all have built new choice lanes to relieve congestion during peak travel times. These are newly constructed lanes designed, built, financed, operated, and maintained by the private sector through public-private partnerships. Partnering with the private sector to help relieve urban congestion is part of Governor Lee's Build With Us proposal, which frees up funds to enhance transportation infrastructure in rural communities. And let's be clear, despite what you might be hearing, choice lanes are not the same as a toll road. A toll road, which is not something TDOT is proposing, requires all drivers using the road to pay a fee to get from point A to point B. With choice lanes, drivers can choose to use the new choice lanes or continue to utilize the existing general purpose lanes where a user fee is never charged. The user fees are based on driver demand, helping to ensure 50 miles per hour travel speeds even during peak periods. And an added bonus is public transit partners can also choose to use the choice lanes for more predictable schedules. A robust transportation network that includes choice lanes provides more balance to quality of life due to less time spent in traffic, improves traffic conditions for motorists using the general purpose lanes as there are fewer vehicles utilizing them, frees up funds to invest in infrastructure in rural communities, impacts regional economic prosperity positively, offers enhanced transit options as transit buses can use the lanes, and improves air quality due to less idling as a result of reduced traffic congestion. We at TDOT are excited at the prospect of bringing choice lanes to some of the most congested areas in Tennessee. Our goal is to ensure Tennesseans have a safe, reliable, modernized infrastructure system for generations to come, and we're asking you to build with us.
All right, so that gives you a little better feel. I think most of you have are probably pretty familiar with how these work. How many people in here, show of hands, have been on a managed lane somewhere in the country? Yeah, a lot of hands going up. So a lot of people are familiar with this. The one thing that I want to emphasize, and then we'll stop in a minute and answer questions. But the one thing I want to emphasize, people are like, well, we've got to, what are we going to do to help transit? And I will tell you that one of the reasons we did this was to be able to help transit. And virtually, I actually don't know of a place that doesn't, that I can think of. But the states that we talked to all allowed our public transit buses to be able to get into these lanes. And so what, you think about that and what it accomplishes is those people are all of a sudden able to also reduce their traffic times that are getting on the bus to get where they are headed. And number two, they have reliability to get there in a certain time if they're going to work or wherever they're doing. And so what all of these other folks that have done this, states that have done this, or cities that have done this, have seen that their ridership has gone up significantly in order to be able to take advantage of this. I mean, and so, you know, when I think about what we can do in order to move a greater number of people in a, I mean, my basic challenge is how do we get more throughput through our existing roads as well as these choice lanes. And so if we can get, we're also investing in technology. I don't know if y'all get a chance sometime to drive out I-24. We've got one of the most advanced testing grounds in the country to be able to look at how I-24 operates with Murfreesboro Road, and we're doing for the first time that we've tried in Tennessee variable speed limits. So the biggest problem we have with being able to get people where they want to go is accidents. And the biggest problem really we have with accidents is secondary accidents, because once the traffic stops, there's a we're trying to get it cleared as quickly as possible because of that second accident that will likely occur every minute that goes on after that accident has occurred and traffic is stopped. And so everybody in here has driven down the road and come up on an accident and come to a stop only to wait for a few minutes, and then it starts going again, so you've got this accordion effect that occurs. And so if you can begin to slow the traffic down from 70 to 60 to 50 to keep that accident from happening in real time, then it actually means you get a lot more throughput. So I know there's a lot of criticism about you got 40 mile an hour speed limit on I-24 coming in that. Well, you know, partly it's going 30 miles an hour. So, I mean, you know, so you don't need to be going 60 because you're likely to have an accident. And so if we can get, you know, if we can use some of these tools that we know work in other places to be able to get things progressing, then we get much more throughput through the same amount of lanes. And then if we get these additional choice lanes going, it just allows us to expedite that and get moving. Real quick here, I mentioned this earlier, but the $3 billion that the governor recommended and that the legislature passed actually is $3.3 billion. $300 million you see there goes straight to the counties, and those dollars are administered under the state aid program, which is an existing program, and those dollars are going straight. We've been spending about $20 million a year annually on that for the last few years, and we're putting $300 million in this year. Which goes straight to the counties for them to figure out what they want to do with it. The $3 billion as part of this with the legislature, they want to make sure that we were fair and spent these dollars statewide. Not, I mean, you could argue certainly. I mean, everybody in here knows that the most congested area in Tennessee is out here, but the governor felt strongly, and in the legislature as well, that we needed to make sure that everybody, every major city, even in the rural areas of interstate expansion, were able to get some dollars to improve. And so that's the reason for that. The 750 is not a magic number. It's just generally, well, it's just divided by 4 of the $3 billion, and there will be more spent in areas that are more congested because they will end up getting more dollars from the standpoint of the choice lanes, because the choice lanes, just to point out, we got this 3.3 billion, but the important thing to recognize is that the private sectors, they come and react to the projects that we propose. They will be financing and putting in dollars that will allow us to leverage that 3 billion into much more than 3 billion. And and then the way, the reason we're not having to pay tax dollars to do that is those user fees that people choose, the reason they're called choice lanes, choose to get into, those fees that are paid will then go back to that company that is financing that build of that managed lane. I'm gonna stop there. Answer questions. I also want to again thank Department of Labor and Workforce for the work with us at TDOT. Continually been a great partner, and we appreciate all you do for us. All right, so I already talked longer. I thought I was. I'll open it up for questions. Anybody?
Commissioner, I have 2 questions.
Yes.
The first one, I'm curious what strategic opportunities are needed to establish or expedite your alternative procurement methods. So what does that look like with environmental utilities coordination and right-of-way procurement? And then on the second question is more EV related. So just kind of curious what that looks like. I understand what the administration is doing to provide chargers on highways.
Yeah.
So how is the state working with the administration on that front and then filling the gaps where those are needed to be filled?
Great question. So let me take the second one first on the electric vehicles. So we didn't really talk about it much, but IIJA, the Infrastructure Act that was passed, provided opportunities for the states to present, actually ask each state to present a plan for how they would provide charging stations statewide. And the guidance was to be able to try to do that in a way that is allowing us to put interstate chargers on within a mile of every exit. It's 50 miles, isn't it, Michael? I think every 50 miles we would have a charger within a mile of the exit. Now, the way we've chosen, and the way I think most every state is going to do it, I mean, we're just like the state doesn't build gas stations and put them on the side of the road. We're going out with a RFP so that there'll be competition in the process, and that's scheduled to happen very soon. And so we'll see what the private sector comes back with. I feel very comfortable and confident that we'll get some good proposals that will allow us then to build out these charging stations. Not in every interstate has to be included in this. And then what we also did with the Fed is put in the old I-64 corridor that runs south in Tennessee all the way across. And that's one, of course, I mean, it's not an interstate now, so it doesn't have these interchanges. It's a little more tricky, but we're putting that into the mix so that corridor would be covered as part of this process. So I'm not sure the response time, but it'll be fairly quick, 30, 60 days to where we will know then kind of how many proposals we have, what came in. We have $88 million set aside to be able to fund that private, and then the private sector will operate and maintain it. So our job is to provide the capital investment on the front end to get those built. So does that answer that success? Now your first question, you may need to repeat.
All right, I'll repeat it.
It has to do with environmental.
I'll restate it. What strategic partnerships are needed to be established to expedite the alternative procurement methods? So just quickly, what does that look like in terms of environmental, utilities coordination, that sort of thing?
Okay, so here's the thing. So no matter how fast we want to build, our projects that have any federal, so any of our interstate projects, those kind of projects, have to go through an environmental process, and that's good. I mean, so we want to go through that process and make sure that environmentally they're sound. So, I would say is that we're not changing anything about the environmental process. Everything that has to be done now will continue to have to be done. What we're changing as we look at this, and what we're doing right now is looking, since the legislature gave us the authority in the session, we've got to report back to them in December, and we're going to lay out a plan of which projects that we think fit the bill for choice lanes, and then we'll also lay out the plan for these other projects. Like I was saying, I mean, I think our people want to know what's actually being done and what isn't. And so we're going to lay that out, and so we're going to start with areas that already have as little environmental impact as we can find. So if we're able to stay within a right-of-way, existing right-of-way, and if you notice that video and those pictures in Dallas, they weren't tunnels, but they were elevated. And so you're able to keep the same right-of-way. And if I'm not impacting the existing right-of-way, then, and I'm building up as opposed to out, then I don't have to go back and do all that again. And so the short answer is we're going to try to be smart about what we build and where we build. The second thing we're going to do is to go ahead and start the environmental process on the ones that we know. We are going to need to do environmental processes, and go ahead and start that process. There's a number of these interstate projects which will not need too much revisit of that, because we've got in a lot of these rural areas enough right-of-way to be able to expand to 3 lanes, even more in many cases, without having to go back through that process. But we're going to go ahead and start now, knowing that we've now got this $3 billion backlog to spend, and go ahead and start that process, working with the feds to be able to get that done, so that we're not waiting for it 5 years from now or 3 years from now when we start spending the funds. So is that all right to answer? Okay. All right. Yes, sir, Bill.
In your investigation with these other states, when they went to this choice lane process, you know, you have the advantage in many cases of you don't have the right-of-way acquisition, it's already taken care of. What were you hearing as far as end-to-end from RFP to opening? Were you given any kind of range of time? So that's my first question, is for when they would have a choice lane available from the time it was, you know, first administered or first authorized. And my second question is, within the 15-year window that you currently deal with, is there anything that y'all are working on to kind of shorten that? I mean, a NEPA notwithstanding and that type of thing. Can you see anything where TDOT could close that window down from, say, 15 to 10 or 15 to 9 or that type of thing?
Well, so just, I'm gonna throw some rough numbers out, but the answer is yes. I would like to get that. I mean, of the 15, there's only about, depending on the size of the project, 3 or 4 years for the actual build side. Most of that is in development, environmental, and development of that project, right away, those kind of things. So, every project's different, so there's no definitive number, but I think we can get that 15 cut in half generally. I mean, at least that 10 cut in half to 5-ish. And then it depends on the time for construction, which will be 3 or 4 years. So, so I think we can make substantial progress on the timeline. You're looking at, depending on how much cooperation in which we have a good relationship with the feds, 2 or 3 years for environmental. If we can avoid that, there's different types of the environmental. Then that speeds that part of the process up. We'll have, it'll take us several months to a year. We'll start working on the RFP, simultaneous RFP will go out. That'll take several months then to review. Then once we select, that'll take several months to negotiate through the process. So, it's a several year process to go from now to then, but we're getting started on all those things now, because what we've got that most states don't have is that $3 billion sitting there in the bank. And so we're not having to slow down or wait, and the private sector knows we've got that $3 billion, and they know we're going to spend it. And so I'm here to tell you they are interested. So, and they're coming to the table. Yes, sir. Anything else? We got one more. Yes, sir.
My question is dealing with the choice lanes. I've heard from different people in other states, once those lanes get put in place, that the fees keep rising. Is there anything going to be put in place as far as keeping those fees at a flat rate during that time frame, or is there any control since it's done by the private sector?
Yeah, that's a that's a really good question. So there's a couple of pieces to that. Number one, as part of the Modernization Act, the legislature established a board that is a state board. I'm gonna say akin to the State Building Commission. Both speakers will have representatives. The governor, the commissioner of transportation, whoever that is, long term, would be on there, and the governor or representative of the governor. They will always have the ultimate decision on pricing. So it's just because the private sector is developing this project, they don't have the ultimate say. They can't charge whatever they want to charge. Now, so then you ask, well, wait a minute, how are they going to spend $1 billion and they don't know what they're, so what happens in every one of these projects is a pricing methodology is developed on the front end, and the pricing methodology is put into the RFP so that everybody is pricing the same thing. They know what they can charge and what they cannot charge. Now, the reason in many cases it's controversial is it actually is designed to be dynamic, in that the reason that it goes up is because as more people get in it, they can't get where they're going in the time frame that you've promised, and so it has to go up in order to get somebody to move over to the other lane. Now, it has been proven that the general purpose lanes, the so-called free lanes, we all know there's nothing free, but the so-called the free lane general purpose lanes have all increased throughput as well. It's helped by just managing the throughput of those lanes. And so, yes, they go up, but we can determine, and I say we, that board, governmental board will determine so that it can never be a total decision of that private entity what they can charge. They've got to have that bandwidth, and when it gets to a certain point of congestion, then they can bump it. Some do it every 8 minutes or but you know going in what you're paying, and then you can make that decision in real time. So, all right.
Commissioner, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Let's give him a round of applause for his
Thank you, everybody.
time.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
And like you stated at the beginning, the good work that you're doing impacts workforce so much because, first of all, you need workforce to get it done, right? And then secondly, if they're not working directly on the project, this is going to help them get to where they need to be to the other jobs that they do have. So just thank you for your time and your partnership with our group and giving us what we need to hear. Thank you.
Great to be here today. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we're going to have an overview of from Michael Hendricks, the Policy Director for Governor Lee, and he's going to give us a workforce development overview. So, Michael, welcome. And yeah.
I'm not introducing him, but I'm going to say something good about him. I have had the opportunity, I would have Tony, I think Tony left, having Michael step into Tony's role has been a great asset for the governor and for our senior staff, and so you're gonna really enjoy being able to work more closely with him. So,
Very good.
thanks, bud. Thanks, sir.
A ringing endorsement. Very good.
We live up to that. Well, it's great to be with you. Oh, thank you. Well, it's great to be with you, and it's great to see so many smiling faces for my first time here. I just wanted to give you all 3 quick key messages and a call to action from Governor Lee. First of all, the governor greatly appreciates you and the work that you're doing, and I'm grateful for that. So greatly appreciates you, greatly appreciates the work and the membership of this board and the people who are part of this meeting today and for every quarter that we have. He's grateful for you, your work, the labors, and for devoting your time and attention to what Commissioner Thomas and her team work on day in and day out. The governor's connected to this work. The governor is closely counting and connecting on this work and counting on you to help steer this big workforce mission that's a huge priority to him. And he knows, and I know, that this board does real work, does real policy, and that it is really important. And of course, getting to know Commissioner Thomas and getting to know her team, I know that the work that you do has real impact too. Second message is this is aligned with what the governor wants to get done. Over the first term for the governor in office, Tennessee's added hundreds of thousands of new jobs, and that is an incredible, incredible thing. It's a testament to our dynamism, to our potential. It's also proof that a state with workers wins every time. And now it's incumbent to ensure that our workforce pipeline is keeping up with that pace and that we can set a visionary path forward. So I said it's a top issue for the governor, workforce development and its connection to education. There's a reason for that. This is also all part of his sort of top-level goals for the administration. 5 goals to keep in mind, and then you'll see how it all fits in there. Good jobs, great schools, safe neighborhoods, strong families, and a better future. So what does all this mean? This means ensuring that every Tennessean enjoys the opportunity of a high-quality job and the dignity of work. That, of course, is very much involved in what we're doing, but it also starts well beforehand. It starts K through 12. It starts in the classroom, preparing today's students to be tomorrow's workforce. And we can do that too, help satisfy that goal by raising workforce participation, which I know is a big priority for the governor and the commissioner, something that you all talked about, I believe, in the last board meeting. And ensuring that there are jobs by driving economic prosperity and opportunity across Tennessee and promoting the state as the best place to do business and the best place to work in America. And it's going to take, of course, all partners rowing in the same direction. The governor, every member of this board, Labor Department, ECD, TDOT. Third and final message is I can be a link for you. I'm here to serve and to help. This is personally important for me. My background before I came in here, I started my career at the U.S. Chamber, was in the policy realm, then came here to serve. Anything you need from me, or anything that you sense we can do more of, any connections that we can be help making, just let me know. And I can also be, along with a commissioner, linked to other agencies working in concert with this board and in communities to inform the work, get the work out there, inform and do workforce better. And then I'm looking forward to getting to know you. So please don't be a stranger. I won't be a stranger for you. I'm warning you in advance. I want to get to know you. Last but not least, I just want to end with a call to action. Let's think big. Let's think innovatively. Let's empower every Tennessee worker and every Tennessee company toward work and toward flourishing. That's how Tennessee will continue to lead the nation. Look forward to doing that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We're truly looking forward to your participation with us, and thank you. Everything you said is pretty much in line with what we've been working on, so I'm glad we're on the same page so far. All right, let's get an update on our workforce department. So Commissioner Thomas, why don't you tell us what's going on?
Thank you, Chairman Berry. And I know Butch has left the building, but I want to tell you how much I appreciate, I know how busy he is, but I think it speaks volumes to this board that folks realize how important it is to get in front of you to talk about all things that impact workforce. And just to kind of put a bow on it, it's like, okay, you got the TDOT commissioner here talking about all these road plans. It's going to take workforce to get done everything that he talked about in those slides. And it's also going to take transportation solutions so that as we connect Tennesseans to opportunities, they can actually get there. So I think that's very relevant, and we'll continue to have those conversations. This is not a one and done. We'll have a point person from the Department of Transportation that we'll be able to interface with and talk very meaningfully about what this does, particularly as it intersects with things like apprenticeship, which we know were highlighted in the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Acts, or IJA, that he talked about. So before I get into some more key updates, I just want to again thank Michael. Michael and I had the opportunity to sit down, I believe last week, a week ago, and you could probably see sparks flying out of my office because the energy and the enthusiasm that he has brought and his knowledge, particularly from at the federal policy level to Tennessee, we are in good shape having him as the governor's policy director, and I'm so excited about what I believe will be a stronger connectivity to all the assets available to this board and to the department around workforce development. And so first and foremost, we have a returning person back in our ranks, and I want to ask Steve Plell if he will stand up. As many of you know, Steve left to do his military training a few months ago. And he has made his way back, and we were excited to hear about a little bit about his time in training, but we're certainly glad he's back. Thank you, Steve, for your commitment to serve Tennessee and, more importantly, your country. Thank you. A couple of quick things. One, I want to just really update you on the Economic and Workforce Task Group work. That work is ongoing. Folks here, Deborah, Sharita, and others who participate in this work. I got to tell you, I'm so excited and exhausted at the same time because it's just so much going on, but it's good work. And we continue to meet. We're in each other's space probably more than you realize. We were on a call yesterday talking about project work and how at the enterprise level we come up with these solutions. So I want you to know that as we continue to meet and flesh out, there's going to be real opportunity for this body to sort of make this seminal work. The goal is that we don't do all of this and then we have to start over every time there's a new project, every time there's a new administration. So part of the focus will be, how do we ensure that our policy and our practice are cemented so that it seals this work that's being done? And so as this task group continues to meet and we talk about how we meet both large projects that ECD leads the way on, or any parts in between where there's training gaps or needs, we're going to continue to have that conversation. Why is this important? I know I sound like a broken record. At the federal level, we are continually concerned about appropriations. At a time when workforce development is probably the most important topic of conversation across the country, we're seeing federal investments decline. That is a worrying trend for us. It's worrying because when we look at the energy around economic business development in the Southeast, it's where it's the strongest. But the Southeast, unfortunately, has been the states where those declinations are happening. And it doesn't make a lot of sense, except we are still under the guise of a very antiquated funding formula that does not favor states in the Southeast. And so as we talk about reauthorization, which has gone silent, I don't think you can have that conversation without talking about a balanced and fair funding mechanism for states that are leading the nation in this work, such as Tennessee. So stay tuned to that. It's a stop-start model. As I told you, you'll hear something, it doesn't happen. But I believe this board, through a position paper, through a white paper, we can address some of those things, because if we're not vocal, it looks as if it doesn't matter. And so I'll keep you posted on that. Chairman Berry alluded to me taking on the role as the National Governors Association Workforce Liaison Chair. I say I'm a glutton for punishment, but in addition to my day job to serve Tennessee as best I can, it's important for us to have the seat at the table to talk about not only how these policies are impactful to Tennessee, but impactful across the nation. Because we need strong partnerships across our borders, because we now have regional workforces. It's not a Tennessee workforce alone. These are regional workforce, whether it's Alabama or Georgia or Virginia. These regional workforces are important, and so we have to talk about policy considerations even beyond our borders, and that's really what will guide this work. And since Chairman Berry sort of shared that bit about me, I'm going to give you a tidbit about him, because it's only fair. Chairman Berry has had a bit of a job change since you last saw him. He is now in a corporate role with Dollywood's management partner. And so he sees the world at Dollywood and beyond. So let's congratulate Chairman Berry on his new role. But I'm so thankful that this role keeps him as chair, because I absolutely, the energy and the leadership he's provided is what we're going to need as we move forward. It was really at the work we sort of tag teamed the folks at the NGA conference in D.C. And Chairman Berry, just so you know, now the National Governors Association, I'm sure Michael knows this, they've entered a workforce strategic planning collaborative with the U.S. Department of Labor. Because one of the things that we shared with them was we do not want to go through another exercise in Tennessee where we're putting together a 300 and 400-page plan that this board has to ratify that doesn't really say anything. It's an exercise of futility. It doesn't help anybody. It's just grunt work. And so we were very vocal about, if we're going to use our state workforce boards to lead that planning, it should be private sector input that gets to a result. And so as a result of this collaborative, there's sort of three phases. There'll be estate planning tool development, tool deployment and application, and continued action. So I was excited to see U.S. Department of Labor partner with NGA to do this work. I don't need to tell you that we've already signed up to see how they can be of service to us as we enter into our state planning phase. So stay tuned for that. Acting Secretary of U.S. Department of Labor, Julie Sue, will be visiting our state. She will be in Nashville on Monday. That's all I can tell you. I received a call yesterday from the regional administrator to let us know that visit was happening. I do not have meeting details on that. I do know that she requested sort of some workforce updates on our state and how well we're doing. I don't know what that will lead to, except to know she's in the state. It will be great because if I had my druther, she would be standing in front of this board, but I don't. But I think, as we start to dig our heels in a little bit more to do this work, I need us being an example to U.S. Department of Labor, not the other way around, if that makes sense. I'm grateful for their partnership, but there are some things that Tennessee has to get done, and we simply can't wait. But I will keep you posted if anything comes out of that visit. Also, September 28th, they are convening a number of workforce leaders from across the country to have a conversation with the Schultz Foundation around federal policy. Tennessee has been extended an invitation. I've been asked to be at that roundtable on September 28th. It's sort of a late ask, but I think it's important to be there. And part of the conversation is that how do we start to think about things that we've discussed today and beyond and in the past, but more importantly, how can certain states start to have demonstration models of how to make practice out of some of the things that we think are strong recommendations. And so I'll be sure to bring that information back to this board once that meeting has taken place. We have several states that will be doing a lot of travel. It's a heavy travel season for us. There's National Association meetings in Anaheim. We have staff that will be going to Orange Beach, Alabama for SETA. There we will have an opportunity to do a virtual signing of our Southeastern EV Collaborative. Not that it's about Tennessee, but I have to tell you that Southeastern EV Collaborative was started right here in this room. Sharita, you were here. It was a Tennessee recommendation, and we're going to memorialize that in a virtual signing. And what that does, it aligns all the Southeastern states to have policy, practice, recommendations, curriculum, and training for the EV industry as a region, which I think is pretty impressive. And lastly, there is a U.S. Department of Labor Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act convening in Chicago November 14th and 15th. We have received an invitation for that as well, and that is opportunities to get in front of U.S. Department of Labor ahead of any reauthorization, budgeting, and things of that nature. So a lot of travel coming up, a lot of things that are happening. I will absolutely make sure I'm briefing you on that. But a couple of proud things before I move forward. One, as you know, our department released the unemployment rates, 3.1%, record low for the state of Tennessee. And even though we released the numbers, we also know that 3.1% allows me to kind of clap my hands in one regard and clutch my heart with the other, right? Because it adds more pressure to how are we going to continue to develop a workforce. We are seeing labor force participation kind of gradually start to move a little bit, but we need stability and we need to be able to build off any momentum that we get. What does that mean? I'll leave you with a couple of quick things that the department is looking to take action on. We have got to get super aggressive on, I mentioned the funding declinations, that we can't wait for appropriations. It's simply too late. We've got to get Tennesseans connected to work. That means that we have to have evidence-based approaches that we can take back and receive funding to really service the gaps that we have right now. We have businesses that need customized training models. We cannot have those businesses hamstrung by federal regulations that do not suit their needs and are rife with administrative burdens. So we're going to continue to work on how we offer ready now solutions for customized training for businesses. That's important. The second thing around also the funding piece of that is being able to sit in community. Northeast, we're headed their way next week. I'm actually taking my entire senior team to Education and Workforce Conference in Northeast Tennessee in Kingsport. Because for this department, we are going to sit in community and hear and listen and learn from the folks that are there servicing Tennesseans every day on the ground to better inform our policies, to find out if what we did 5 years ago is relevant to what we're doing today. So you're going to see for us a more body of work around policy, not a flooding of policies, but perhaps a revision or rescission of policies that were beneficial 3 years ago, but are a barrier today. And in order to do that, we have to be informed by the public that we're trying to serve. So that will be a new posture that we will take on. And so what that means, that may be us doing the work through ourselves or our local board infrastructure, or it may be us resourcing a nonprofit that's doing the work anyway. And so what we're looking to do is get to precision and eliminate duplication. And so kind of stay tuned. It's a lot. I know the team is kind of looking at me like, okay, one more thing. But the governor's counting on us to do this, and I certainly don't think we can put our kickstand out. We've done some great things, but we got a lot of work to do, and to do that, we have got to look at changing the way we do business and doing that sooner rather than later. And so I will tell you, as I always do, thank you so much for being a board that is full of passion, but it also likes to get things done. And I really appreciate that. So between the lines, we'll be sharing more information with you. I did have an article, I believe Eiler has given each one of you, because I like for you to know what I'm seeing as well, and it really starts to pull together some thoughts we're having around infrastructure, because that's really the tone of this meeting, was infrastructure, but to also let the board know why this is important. Everything you will hear about infrastructure has a workforce component tied to it, and we need a strategic, vision-oriented plan for workforce around infrastructure. If not, things are going to happen circumstantially, and we can't afford to let that happen. So thank you for your patience. Always available if you have any questions. And Mr. Chairman, those are my updates.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Commissioner. I'm going to shake things up a little bit, and we're going to shift some things around. We're going to go ahead and take a break. So take 10 minutes. It is 11:23. Be back at 11:33, and we'll get some committee updates. The chair of that committee is Michelle Falcone. So if you would, tell us what happened in your committee meeting earlier today.
Well, we come again asking for a vote. I'm going to start by giving a little bit of updates that we received today, and then we will pass to ask the board members to see if they want to pass the motions. But we also have a little bit of show and tell. So I want to show a lot of what the work that it's been done behind the scenes that I thought that it was going to be immensely beneficial for everybody to see. So let's start with Brian. He is a budgeting and fiscal director. He provided a fiscal overview, and we're trending, I'm glad to say we're trending in the right direction. I bet he's going to go into deep at the end of the board meeting today, so I'm not going to bore you with the details, but he did share that he is very excited on the negotiated KPIs that we have over here, and I know that we're going to touch base on that, but we have them over here, specifically that we are down to 13, if I'm not mistaken, and that he is looking forward to the pilot that is living wages. That it means participants that earn living wage within 12 months. So we're going to go a little bit, there's going to be more discussion about that, but we got a first step. First view on that. We also look into the overview of the executive summary dashboard, which is super amazing. We're going to have more presentation on that as well, but I just want to tell you that it just blows away how much you can go and deep dive in different programs and how are we, meeting our marks there. Jay Baker, the Assistant Commissioner for Adult Education, also presented and provided an update on AE. I'm very glad to say that we have surpassed the participation. So we have from 11,000, we're meeting at 12,000 mark. So that's great work that has been done there for the outreach. We do have a little bit of work to do in the educational levels gains. So there's work to be done there. So the ask for the board is to just get the word out there. We as employers can do a lot of liaisons with adult education and everything that has to do with working together. We have business consultants that can go there. So the ask of us is to go out there as employers and spread the good word. So that's the ask for us. On policy, Justin is actually going to be part of my show and tell today, but I'm going to ask for a vote after the presentation of the three. So let me start with I have my SharePoint here. I don't know about you, but I can get my SharePoint on my phone. So we're going to ask you to pass three policies today, all right? The first one is the State Workforce Services Policy, Eligible Training Provider. This is just a streamline. It's going to supersede the one that we have the one that we have right now. So it's going to supersede that, just streamlining the process, making sure that we're getting all, the fluff, as I was told, and, just reducing and just going to the mark. So it's just a supersede, but it also is going to streamline and make it more approachable for everybody. So that's the first one. The second one is a corrections policy, which is very interesting for us to see, and it corrects three items in three different policies. The first one in the local governance, which it was just a typo it said 30 and it was supposed to be 60, so that's it. The second one was a policy correction in youth eligibility. It had a typo from 24 to 21, EC. I missed one. and a removal of the dates, because we already voted and auto renewal policies, right? So one just removes that date. That's it, those three updates. And then, like Ms. Tia said, because I'm gonna give her credit, she said this better than anybody, and it ties with what Commissioner Thomas was saying before. You know, we sometimes we need to get, you know, we are in the middle of getting the work done, so we need to remove ourselves. So that's what the rescinding of these two policies does. This is more guideline, it's more SOPs, it's how to, in basic terms, it's just how to make stuff. Now you have to meet this criteria, so just removing that. So we're going to rescind those two policies. The third one is my favorite, and it speaks about accountability, right? So before sending those policies out for commentary, we have now a structured process which is going to receive the signature of all of the ones that are impacted, the parties that are going to be involved, and then they're going to be sent to the public commentary. But I wanted Justin to provide us an update. This is public. We all can go and make your commentary, so he's going to talk a little bit about that.
Okay, good morning. Sorry about that. Thank you for letting me come up and speak. This is, I get excited about policy, so I get to come up and talk about this. This is fun for me. As committee chair was talking about with those signature documents, something new that we're doing with our processes is before we release any kind of policy out to the public, we want to make sure the policy releasing is good. So we're going through a lot of different checks to make sure these policies are good, that we're considering everything. It's going through legal to make sure we're in compliance with what we need to be, and that subject matter experts, that assistant commissioners for all our core programs, everyone is taking a look at these policies. So we want these policies to be even more effective than they have in the past. So we're implementing that to make sure we have those checks and balances. The second thing is we have released these for policies for public comment in the past, but we're implementing some new processes, a new landing page for that, and trying to make that process more transparent. So we're trying to be more effective and also more transparent with our policies. So as you'll see on the webpage, the two policies that are going to be voted on here in a bit are there, and they're still there. We want to keep them there until the board actually votes on them, so that way everyone can continue to see those up until the time that they're being voted on by you as the board. We're being transparent of when public comment period is, 30-day public comment period, when it's open and when it's closed. And we did not have any comments on these policies, but as comments are coming in, we want those comments to be out there for the public to see as well. So as they come in, we'll put that on that website so that all the comments are available to be seen. The part that, my favorite part about this new piece, if you want to scroll up just a little bit, Chris, so the get notifications piece. So something we're new and to be doing that's new to be more transparent is we're asking people to sign up to get notifications on public comment. So as we release new policies for public comment, as we maybe upload new comments that are coming in, if you're signed up for this, and there are certain people that we're going to automatically sign up because it's part of their job, the local boards, the county mayors, we want them to get these notifications, to know what's going on. But really anyone in this room, anyone online watching, anyone can sign up to get these notifications that whenever we post something new on this site, you're going to get a notification that, hey, new policies there, new comments there, something along that lines. So you can sign up, subscribe right there on the page. If you don't want to go to the page to do it, just talk to me. I'll get you signed up for it. And then if you decide you don't want to, you can actually unsubscribe as well. You don't have to keep it long term. So we have that new option that if anyone's interested, whoever that might be, they can sign up and get these notifications and be involved in this public comment process. So that's our new landing page for this. This is kind of first go with it, but we hope this allows us to be more effective with our policies, but also more transparent.
And as a reminder, the policy is going into effect as we vote on them. So I am asking for the vote. Any commentary?
Okay, any questions for Michelle or the Oversight Committee on what they're recommending to the board as a whole? Okay, do I hear a motion to accept the recommended policy changes as presented by the Oversight Committee? Thank you. Second?
Second, Jason Bates.
Thank you. Okay, any other discussion or questions for the Oversight Committee? Yes. I believe it was Tim. All right. Hearing none, all in favor of accepting the policy changes as presented by the Oversight Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, those are approved. Michelle, thank you for leading that committee this morning, and happy to have more efficiency in getting some of those hurdles out of the way. So that's all good work, so thank you for that. All right, let's hear from the Operations Committee. Jason Bates is the vice chair, and he led the meeting today. Tell us what happened in that meeting.
Thank you, Chairman Barry. Today, we were able to hear from our 3 WEO work groups, and I'm going to share with them what they are doing with us. In addition, we also then joined the Innovations Committee for some presentations with KPMG and University of Tennessee. So I'll let Marshall talk about that when he gives his presentation. Initially, we started off with our apprenticeship workplace learning work group. Matthew Spinella reported out for that group. They last met on July 24th. This group has exceeded all of their overreaching goals. Just as an information, as of July 31st, there are 7,464 apprentices, up from 7,220 in the last quarter, so that's a good improvement there, and 40,795 work-based learning students in quarter 4 of the 2022 school year statewide, which is up from 38,372 in quarter 4 of the previous school year. There are now 52 Tennessee certified pre-apprentice programs, of which 4 are new programs since our last quarter, and this will continue to help people prepare to continue to be participating in the registered apprenticeship programs. A major focus at the TDOE is for the upcoming or the current school year that just started. They're continuing to work on the Tennessee Certified Pre-Apprenticeship Program and the Registered Apprenticeship Program partnerships at the high school level. So that's an area of focus with the Department of Education. And of course, we're going to be continuing, that group will be continuing to work with providing more opportunities for all of Tennesseans as they've achieved their goals and completing all of their milestones except for one. So they've done a great job, and we appreciate all the work that Matthew and the rest of that work group has done in improving our apprenticeship programs throughout the state of Tennessee, which is very, very important in getting people having the skills necessary for the work to be done. Our second work group was our business services work group. The presentation was by Debbie Fillers and Jennifer Thacker. They shared with us the work that they've been doing in meeting with the Office of Business Solutions to determine what data reports could be run to provide the same overall purpose of the dashboard. They met with the Wire Division to discuss the federal metrics that would be reported to the committee, specifically employee penetration rate and return services. There were some questions around the return services in that what is considered a goal or objective that would indicate success for return services. Currently, they're at 7.6%. And how do we know if that's good or bad? So they're going to be looking at making improvements there to help us understand, is that return services a benefit? They shared with us how they're composing their quarterly data report and continue to complete a business service standard operating procedure in that area. Through June 30th of this year, there have been 10,554 employers who have received 1,976 services statewide from the various different business service partners. So that is the work that that group has been doing. Lastly, the Job Seeker Work Group, presented by Destiny Brown and Nestor Reyes, they shared with us the work that they've been doing. They've met recently throughout the summer on June 8th, June 13th, and the 14th, as they were working to revise their overarching goal, much from the feedback that they received at our last committee meeting, and they shared with us a new goal statement that they had established, which is to improve job seekers' experience by aligning the workforce system through quality, convenient, and easily accessible state resources. They are on track to complete all of their milestones on time, and they will continue to utilize the current state section of their workforce resilience plan to continue to help create a new objective charter. Additionally, they have transitioned to creating a communication document to highlight job seeker resources available instead of a communication plan. And so they were able to share some of that with us and doing some great work there, and we appreciate that effort. And of course, they also shared with us some of the new work groups as part of their membership. Chairman, that is the summary of the Operations Committee report.
Thank you, Jason. Any questions for Jason or the Operations Committee? Okay, let's hear from the Innovation Committee. Marshall Graves is the vice chair, and he is in casual Friday mode today, but not because he wanted to be. Yeah. So, but we may all take a cue from him, and maybe we all show up that way next time.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Chairman. I'm sitting in for our chair, Kevin Vaughn, who's unable to attend today. We're always appreciative of Teresa Smith, who's our staff liaison, for managing our meeting. We welcome Linda Bosch to our committee and on the board this morning. Ryan Allen, Assistant Commissioner of the Wire Division, and Ben Pacino provided our committee with an update on the state-based metrics, or we sometimes call them KPIs. Our committee's been pushing towards looking at some metrics that are more outcomes-based, and they presented some information around how they're going to measure some of these new outcome-based metrics, including living wage and so forth. Part of our committee routine is to have different members of our of our local areas present best practices. We had the group from the Northwest region today, Jennifer Bain and Christy Bennett, and they presented on some best practices specifically around how they connect with employers in their region. And they talked about various programs that they use, including meetings that they perform and different virtual programs that they offer. We joined with the Operations Committee to hear a couple of presentations. We came into the room here. Paul Jennings, well, first we had KPMG, and James Moore is the engagement partner from KPMG. They are on a 6-month program under the guidance of our commissioner to do a program evaluation of our state workforce programs. And we should expect as a board over the next few meetings to get a more broad update from them as they do a very extensive evaluation of the way we deliver programs across the state of Tennessee. Also, we had the team from UT Center for Industrial Studies, Paul Jennings and Tamara Parsons. We've heard in the past, we've established an initiative from our board to certify our board based on best practices really in the nation and internationally. And Paul and Tamara have been leading that work. The work has had a little pause, but they're back on track to put this work together. And basically what we're looking for is a way to certify the board that the board is essentially structured correctly and doing the right things. And they'll come forward over the next few months with us with a more robust plan, but they kind of gave us an update on where they were with the work. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, that's what we did. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you for the report. Any questions for Marshall or the Innovation Committee? Very good. Okay, well, next we're going to hear from the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. So please come on up and we'll be happy to hear your presentation.
Thank you very much. Well, I'll say good afternoon since we're almost there instead of good morning to you all. My name is Molly Cripps, and I'm the Director of the Office of Energy Programs in the Department of Environment and Conservation. And many of you are all probably thinking, well, I've never heard of y'all. So I'm going to take you all through a couple of slides in a moment to tell y'all who we are and what we do. But first, I would like to share my thanks with Commissioner for inviting us to be here today. We really appreciate this opportunity. I've been with the state now for 13 years, and I think this is the first time I have been engaged with this board. So I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm going to have a few asks, but they are opportunities that I think that you'll be very pleased with, and I look forward to sharing those with you all and being able to engage with you all further. All right, so let's see, my first slide here. There we go. All right. Taking you through our About TDEC Office of Energy Programs. We go by OEP for short. I think since we are with TDEC, an important thing to tell you all is that we are not a regulatory division. We are in the Bureau of Environment, so we do have, of course, all of our sister divisions in that bureau that do have regulatory functions, but we do not. We provide education and outreach, technical assistance, and or funding or financing opportunities in several different focus areas. So we've got energy efficiency, energy management, renewable energy, energy security planning, preparedness and response, and energy and transportation. Of these five, those last two that I mentioned have been our biggest focuses, probably for the last, 5 or 6 years or so, I would say. And it ebbs and flows from, year to year as far as what we have funding for. So our focuses over the last several years have largely been informed by the funding that we have had coming through the Department of Energy, as well as the Volkswagen Environmental Mitigation Trust on the energy and transportation side, and of course now with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and Inflation Reduction Act. Our activities, we intend for all of these to promote the efficient, effective use of energy and enhance the environment and economic health of the state. If you're interested in learning more, just Google TDEC OEP, and it will pull up our division. We are the governor-designated state energy office for the state of Tennessee. The reason I mention this is that means that I have a counterpart in the 49 other states, the 5 territories, and DC, and we worked very closely together. We have a wonderful national association, the National Association of State Energy Officials, NASEO for short. I currently serve as the vice chair, and I've found that that organization has just been wonderful for many different reasons, but in the technical assistance side to us, just making sure we're able to go after every federal dollar that we can in the state energy offices where it makes sense for us to do so, and providing us with the assistance to make sure we're not missing out on any funds within our states and territories. I mentioned that we receive the bulk of our funding from the U.S. Department of Energy simply because that's who typically rules our world. But we have been working with other agencies and our sister divisions. So we now oversee some EPA funding for our Division of Air Pollution Control. And we are also partnering with TDOT on the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program. And there have been a few items that have come out under IIJA, FHWA that TDOT has said don't think this is our wheelhouse. How about y'all? We're like, yeah. Can you provide us a letter of support? And they're all for it. So it's worked out very well for us to partner, particularly with TDOT. I'll provide just a bit of information about what is on DOE's plate with regard to Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So that act created 60 new DOE programs, and 16 of those are demonstration and deployment program, or 32 are deployment. And then we have a number that have expanded funding for existing research, development, and demonstration and deployment programs. But total for DOE was over $60 billion. A lot of this is flowing through state energy offices. We had quite a bit of the funding earmarked for us. There are other programs, while they weren't earmarked for us, we were the logical choice. And it's looked a bit different as how it's played out in every state. I know you all have had lots of information thrown at you over the last, where are we now? Almost 20 months or close to 22 since that passed. But if you need more information about what's going on through DOE, please get in touch. With regard to the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed last year, that's directing $391 billion to support clean energy and to address climate change. Now, this is not just what's necessarily flowing through DOE. A lot, of course, is going through EPA as well. But I do want to highlight a couple of items here. The one we are getting the most questions for that are earmarked for state energy offices are those home energy rebate programs. Because people like to think that after an act passes, the next day you can have that money and that you can just flow everything throughout the state. Unfortunately, no. DOE just released guidance for that a couple of weeks ago. And if y'all were to look at that, you would wonder how we were ever going to make that program fly in Tennessee, seriously. But we've already been doing a lot of great work with Tennessee Valley Authority. We're very fortunate that they're our partner on those. We don't have a launch date inside at this point, but I do want you to know that those are coming. There is a heavy low to moderate income focus for those, so a lot of those have to be income qualified, throwing on extra layers. But since we have received more inquiries from the general public about that than anything since I've been with the office, I wanted to let you all know they're coming. It's just going to be a few more months. All right, so here we go. I wanted to provide you all just a bit more information about our IIJA and IRA opportunities. So as I mentioned, some are earmarked for state energy offices, others are not. Some have a specific workforce development focus. Others, it's part of what is considered our list of eligible activities. Here are two examples. One, energy auditor training, obviously a workforce focus. Contractor training, obviously a workforce, workforce focus. But we're waiting for DOE to inform us how those will flow for the first one. They have told us that the second one is going to be $150 million in formula. What does that mean for Tennessee? I know you can't see this very well, but that translates to $2.9 million in the formula that flows to Tennessee. So this is my first ask here. When I read this legal requirements document, I thought, oh my goodness, this was another one of like, oh wow, we've got a lot of work to do. This did have a deadline of September the 30th. Thank goodness they listened to us and they've pushed it to January the 31st. So we've got a little time. So that's my first ask. We are going to need some folks that can assist us with this. And I'm thinking of this one, Commissioner, as being one that it might make more sense to have a good chunk of it actually flow over to you all, but we'll sit down and we'll get that figured out. Would just love to know who I should work with on your team, and I can pass those documents to you all. The other ones I have on here, they are, they're focused on something other than workforce development, but we can use funding for workforce development. The first one, grid resilience, DOE is still contemplating, or rather they're still considering our plan. So we're not ready to move forward with that one yet either. We have roughly High 30s is what the count is, or so we think, as they push those funds out over 5 years. But some of that and our 15% state match can also be used toward workforce development. The local power companies in Tennessee Valley Authority have noted that they would like to see some of those funds go toward that. We will launch a stakeholder working group. That will likely not occur until Q4 2023. We will want to have someone on from Department of Labor, and in fact, we noted in our plan that we would collaborate with you all on that to make sure that Department of Labor is represented. So more information on that down the road. The second box here is the rebate programs that I mentioned. We're a ways away from that yet. There is funding available under that we can put for workforce development, as well as we continue to work through with Tennessee Valley Authority and the local power companies to figure out how that program will look. More information to come on that about what is needed in that space. That will inform then the contractor training grants program that I mentioned, and we want that to, of course, be of benefit to those rebate programs. National Electric Vehicle is the last one that I'll mention here, and this is one that I'd said we are partnering with Department of Transportation on. This particular program requires that all the projects we fund that are serviced by technicians on the back end, the infrastructure that is installed in Tennessee, have to undergo a training course, roughly about 20 hours, and it's called EVITP, Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Training Program. So it's an option for already certified electricians to be a current or rather for someone who's a former apprentice as well. But they have to have that certification to be able to work on this infrastructure. So the Department of Transportation has already been engaged with TBR to make sure that we have a place to place that certification through perhaps the TCATs, et cetera. We do expect to hear more as TDOT rolls out that program and what it looks like. I think it's likely going to be online. And I believe we had a question when Commissioner Ely was speaking about that funding opportunity. So if whoever that was can provide me with your card or information, that funding opportunity has been released, and the deadline for those the proposals is November the 1st. So lots of things in play at this point. In your slide deck, I will note that there's a bit more information about the eligible activities under some of this funding that I mentioned. This is grid. This is one that, again, not workforce focused, but you can see here it runs the gamut. Everything from installation of fire-resistant technologies to undergrounding of power lines to vegetation management. So there's a lot that we need to tackle here with the resilience of the grid, and we have got to bring the workforce to bear to address that. It's my understanding that TVA has been looking at their workforce of the future, and so I'm not aware of that report having been released yet, but that's something we're going to use to help us inform this effort. And then this is just a bit more information about the EE Contractor Training Grant Program. 2 slides of that. Oh, 3 slides of that there. But you all, I believe, have the slides that Tia has provided, and if you have any questions, if you have a chance to look at those, do let me know. But again, my requests are to be able to partner with Department of Labor. We are certainly going to need your assistance on these programs, and I look forward to doing that, Commissioner. Thanks again for the invitation to be here today, and I'll be happy to take any questions after Paula. If you come on up, I want to make sure she's got time to get through hers as well. All right. You're welcome, Paula.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paula Mitchell. I'm one of the deputy directors for the Division of Water Resources at the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. My area of responsibility, we have 3 deputy directors. It's a really large division, 450 employees statewide. My area of responsibility is over our non-permitting programs, and so that includes our drinking water program, compliance and enforcement program, our financial assistance programs like the State Revolving Fund program and our grants, infrastructure grants, as well as our human resource kind of operations and financial performance. And so pleased to be here with you today. This is a topic near and dear to me. And we also have a lot of opportunities in terms of financial investment in water infrastructure. Let's see, let me find my clicker here. Thank you. In 2018, the governor's office released the Tennessee H2O plan. While it recognized the importance of water availability within Tennessee, it also equally recognized the importance of investing in our water workforce. Ensuring that all Tennesseans have reliable, safe, and affordable water and wastewater services is a top priority for the Environmental Protection Agency, our Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, as well as our local water and wastewater utility systems. Every day, communities and businesses depend on Tennessee's water infrastructure for daily routines, for drinking water to irrigation. Behind each of these daily routines are thousands of important water workforce professionals that help to comprise our industry. At the same time, challenges such as emerging contaminants within our water and wastewater systems, cybersecurity risks, aging infrastructure that they're needing to maintain as well as replace and update, and rapidly changing treatment technologies is creating challenges for our drinking water and wastewater systems. As this water system environment grows and evolves, a growing number of service providers are also needing certified operators to manage and maintain these facilities. They are also needing to expand and improve their skill set in order to take on some of these new challenges. In Tennessee, we have thousands of water and wastewater systems that required certified operators. And at the national, in Tennessee alone, many of our rural and suburban certified operators are responsible for maintaining multiple systems. At the national level, the median age of a water employee or a certified operator is 48 years. And they estimate 30 to 50% of these workers are retirement eligible in the next 5 to 10 years. A significant portion of the water industry's workforce, as I mentioned, is approaching retirement age, and there are concerns about how to replace these retiring workforce with skilled, qualified individuals. Here are just a few of the challenges that our water workforce employees are experiencing. This is the theme today is infrastructure, and our water and wastewater infrastructure at the national level is aging. Many of the systems are greater than 50 years old, some of the infrastructure. They also are responsible for dealing with extreme weather events. These can be flooding events, hard freezes that burst pipes. We seem to be having more emergency events and response events that require operators to be quick on their feet, to implement emergency response plans, to deal with customer inquiries and demands, and then to also coordinate with state and federal emergency responders as well. I mentioned customer demands as well as environmental compliance demands are becoming more challenging for these water and wastewater systems, and operators are having to rise to meet those compliance expectations. As systems become more sophisticated and use technology for some of their operations and automation, cybersecurity is a risk, and our water operators need to learn new cybersecurity best practices and internal controls to secure that. They are managing systems with kind of plateaued budgets, but rising cost for supplies, for equipment, construction services. Water availability and water quality is an important issue to many industries, including agriculture, industrial sector, and manufacturing, the transportation sector, recreation, and as well as drinking water. I've got a few slides that kind of feature some of the most emerging or urgent challenges. This one provides an overview of treatment technologies or advancements. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency is partnering with the Environmental Protection Agency and with states to improve cybersecurity and to provide training for certified operators, managers, and their financial staff. They provide training and guidance to implement best practices, establish internal controls, to conduct risk assessments, and especially for systems that utilize industry control systems or other operational technologies. Sampling and laboratory analysis is a major component of daily, weekly, and monthly activities for certified water operators. The amount of data and the reporting requirements with that data are tremendous. In 2016, the EPA implemented the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Systems, for short we call it NPDES or NPDES, electronic reporting rule for wastewater systems to submit all of their sampling data and electronic reporting or reporting, annual permit reporting electronically through states that then flows to the EPA through electronic processes. We anticipate standing up similar electronic reporting workflows for drinking water systems in the next 3 years. This is particularly challenging for rural or suburban Tennessee that has limited access to sufficient broadband to manage this type of reporting, as well as for the operators themselves to conduct that data entry and reporting timely. Our Fleming Training Center is located in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It's been there, I want to say, more than 20 years. I'm sorry, I don't remember the date. But we are responsible for managing, administering a certified operator program. They provide 14 types of water and wastewater certifications. They provide training classes for continuing education, examinations, electronic course books, reference materials to assist operators in studying for and passing their certification test. They also provide on-site technical assistance. They will mobilize, go to a facility, particularly small systems that serve less than 10,000 population, to help the operator in charge troubleshoot operations or perhaps other capital assets or equipment that could be utilized to improve operations to ensure compliance with environmental standards. They are currently developing university partnerships. They have an existing partnership with the MTSU to provide course credit and certification through the Fleming Training Center. They also partner with the Columbia Southern University to provide college credit for several training courses at the Fleming Training Center at no additional charge. They are currently developing a operator and utility manager survey with the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. This is a survey to evaluate demographics, so age, retirement eligibility, as well as kind of perceptions or attitudes within that local water, wastewater system in terms of competitive wages. Do they feel valued? Are they recognized as important contributors to the local community? They are designing that survey now. We anticipate to get survey results by the end of the calendar year, and so we'd certainly be happy to share those results and to get some feedback perhaps on how to approach those results as well. They wanted me to be sure to invite anyone interested to their Operator Appreciation Day on Friday, October 27th. It's in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. They'll have training courses. They're inviting equipment and supply vendors to come out to do demos of equipment and supplies, provide continuing education credits, food trucks, that sort of thing, prizes, recognitions of certified operators. It's a big day. We're inviting a lot of our Division of Water Resources staff to come out and volunteer for some of those activities. I think they've received dozens to close to 100 RSVPs so far, so we're expecting it to be a very popular day for operators. At the national level, there's several professional associations that are also engaged in the water workforce. They include the Tennessee Association of Utility Districts, Clean Water Professionals, American Water Works Association, as well as Communities Unlimited. EPA is the author of the America's Water Sector Workforce Initiative. I've got a hyperlink in that PowerPoint that should be available to the board members to learn more about that. And I'll spend the rest of my time just talking a little bit about our statutory authority as well as some of our funding availability. The Safe Drinking Water Act of 1996 established the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Program as well as the Operator Certification Program. We receive annual federal allotments through EPA or from EPA to the State Revolving Fund Program for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Program, as well as the Clean Water State Revolving Fund Program. But particularly in the Safe Drinking Water Program, we have expanded flexibilities to set aside some of those federal funds to go towards water workforce-focused projects. The Fleming Training Center is a recipient of those set-aside funds. We help to fund that operator certification program as well as expand training. Also, the American Water Infrastructure Act of 2018 provided competitive grant funding to promote water utility workforce development and increase public awareness of water utilities and careers. We are currently not participating in that grant program, but I think it's really just a matter of capacity to be able to develop reasonable work plans, realistic work plans and strategies that we believe that we can really get behind and contribute towards. So we would welcome some kind of input on that as well. Lastly, the Division of Water Resources State Revolving Fund Program also received significant financial investment from EPA through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021. This is the same statutory authority that Molly mentioned. We are a recipient of 5 new federal grants through that legislation. They are the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund General Supplemental. It goes to just more fully fund existing eligibilities in drinking water projects, infrastructure. A dedicated fund just for lead service line inventory and replacement. This is a significant investment into getting the lead out of drinking water over the next 5 years, as well as emerging contaminants and for both clean water and drinking water as well. And so to give an estimate, Tennessee expects to receive around $125 to $150 million per year just through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Traditionally, our state revolving fund passes the majority of those federal funds to local water or wastewater utility systems for infrastructure projects. However, the advantage of the SRFs is that EPA does allow flexibilities for states to determine what are the most important priorities, goals, and then direct funding, not just to infrastructure, but also to workforce initiatives if possible. So I just want to say thank you for the invitation. I appreciate being here. I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions for Molly or Paula, either one? Thank you very much. I appreciate you introducing yourselves to us and tying what you do with workforce. So thank you for that. Also, to add a couple more acronyms for us to remember, I think that is exactly what we needed. All right, next we're going to hear from Infrastructure and Workforce Development, and we're going to connect virtually with Carla Garrett. I think some of us remember Carla from working with us.
Carla, you're on mute, by the way. Not mute, so we can hear you.
We can hear you. We're just going to turn up the volume a little bit. Hang on.
All right, try now.
All right. You can hear me?
We can. It's all yours. Take it away.
Awesome. Well, I can't see you all, but I've been watching online, so I can see you there. Good afternoon. Thank you, Commissioner Thomas, for having me. It's great to see y'all and talk to you. I feel like I'm talking with family, virtually being at home with you all. So today I come to you from U.S. Department of Commerce, Economic Development Administration, where I work on the Good Jobs Challenge program. I'll talk a little bit about the program, but mainly I'll be talking about infrastructure and workforce development through the lens of commerce, but also my experience of working at the local workforce level, state workforce level, and now with the federal government. So infrastructure, you guys talked a lot about it today. I've been listening in, and that's just basic systems and services that any city, county, state, or country needs in order to function. So our roads, our buildings, water, connectivity, power, etc. To get those things functional, we have to invest in them, invest in the equipment, materials, but most importantly, the workers that get that done. Even if we operate from a perspective that technology is advancing and will advance to replace some manual labor, there still has to be programming of that technology by workers. So either way we look at it, there has to be an investment into people that will support our infrastructure needs and projects. This is where infrastructure merges with workforce development, and Congress felt it was important enough to pass a once-in-a-generation investment through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. You all have heard about it from every presenter today. And so this funding is being funneled through federal agencies down to communities. So it's going to organizations federal agencies typically work with, but also those that have not had access to direct federal funding previously. And so it sounds great, workforce supporting infrastructure, vice versa, but how does that translate into actions? What is the federal government doing to support? What should states do? What should local workforce areas do? So this is where I'll bridge in some of my experience of just working at the different levels. So you're not going to find it anywhere formally. Hopefully my experience closely aligns, but I'll just be talking from my perspective here. And so what federal agencies are doing is we're releasing funding that supports infrastructure and workforce development, specifically with commerce through the Infrastructure Investment Act. There's also a program called American Rescue Plan Act, and that allowed Commerce, EDA, to administer the Good Jobs Challenge program. That funding has passed, but what that funding allowed was for local areas, organizations that traditionally do not receive federal funding directly, it allowed them to be able to apply for that funding, tell us what their regional workforce training needs are, and tell us how they plan to meet those needs. So instead of the federal government coming in to say, this is what you're going to focus on, this is how you're going to do it, we allowed organizations to tell us how they're going to do it. And making sure that there was a focus on equity involving underserved populations traditionally overlooked. As Commissioner mentioned earlier, the unemployment rate is low, so we can't continue to tap into our normal pipeline. We have to look at those individuals that traditionally aren't participating or looked over or have significant barriers getting into the workforce. And so we allowed organizations, community colleges, nonprofits, community organizations, we do have state agencies, state workforce boards to apply for this funding and receive it. We currently have 32 grantees all across the country. 2 of them are specifically in Tennessee. One is an organization, Persevere, that is serving all 95 counties in Tennessee. focus on justice impacted and justice involved individuals, getting them workforce training into technology so that they can connect to employers to receive a quality job. And there's a definition we specifically put out. And so those wages will be above prevailing wage. So that's our way of ensuring our participants will receive sufficient funding that can support themselves and their families. And then we're also working to finalize an organization that will provide this, the services to West Tennessee, but also including Arkansas and some cities in Mississippi. So we're working to finalize that, but there will be 2 organizations within Tennessee providing that training. So that's the role of the federal government, is to provide the funding that supports infrastructure and workforce. So then you get to state agencies, those that receive that funding, or you work with those in the community that's receiving the funding. And so what I've seen, just from my experience, it's important for states to understand what funding is flowing into the state and what that funding is allocated to do. And so the federal government, there you'll hear the funding and it sounds similar, it sounds like they do the same thing, but within the fine print, there are things that certain funding can do and certain funding can't do. And that's where you come together to leverage the funding, where, for a specific example, Good Jobs Challenge, we're able to pay tuition support, workforce training for individuals, supportive services, but Good Jobs Challenge cannot provide stipends to individuals as they're going through training. We know that that is important for low-income individuals to supplement their income while going through training. Some participants can't afford that. Well, we have some grantees leveraging their WIOA dollars, because WIOA dollars, it also does workforce training, pays for participant tuition, supportive services, but it can provide subsidized employment funding through work experience. So understanding the funding that's coming into the state, who are those organizations that is over that funding, and understanding the programs that they're building to do workforce development. And then that flows down to your local workforce areas. They also need to understand the funding that's coming into the state and understanding what that funding is for, and working with your employers in your community to identify what those needs are. What are the employers' training needs? What are their hiring practices, and can it be flexible to include and support individuals that traditionally have barriers to getting into these companies? Often what I would see is it's not a federal requirement, but there are company policies in place that prevent individuals from progressing to hiring. So local areas can work with those employers to identify any flexibilities that they can have to support increasing the job seekers that can come into the company. Also working with them to understand their training needs. What skill set do job seekers need to come into the job possessing? Can workforce areas work with your education partners, your community business organizations to develop a training specific to meet those employers' needs? That way they have an influx of individuals coming in with the skill sets they need to go to work, so companies don't have to spend extra time training, but going ahead and producing their product. Also, local areas can or should be conducting more extensive community outreach to engage organizations that are already touching base with the populations you're seeking to serve, but also your community organizations can receive other funding. Like I said, with Good Jobs Challenge, organizations can receive direct federal funding, but your community organization can also receive philanthropic dollars, private supports from the community. So working with those organizations to expand their reach, as Commissioner said earlier, with low employment, you've got to tap into more of the community, that pipeline to expand it. So that's just from my perspective. That's all I formally have planned, so I'm happy to take any questions, comments, or concerns.
Carla, this is Tim. First of all, we thank you for the good information. We miss you at the state level, but we're happy that you're still serving us well at the federal level. What can we be doing as a board to make sure we're maximizing the benefit that the federal funds are offering?
Hi, Chairman Barry. I miss you all too. Thank you. So from my perspective as a board, to maximize the funding that's being offered is, thanks Tia, she's putting your question in the chat, is to be aware of the funding that's coming out. And so one thing is, Commissioner, she has connections everywhere. And so just being in touch, knowing what funding is coming out, and looking for those opportunities to apply or support those organizations that are applying to receive that funding. Everybody's not going to get it, but being connected to those organizations and offering the resources you already have available to support what they're trying to, the programming they're trying to implement. So just from the lens of commerce, currently we have the Recompete pilot program out. It's available for to apply, and it's funding specifically for distressed communities to close the employment gap for prime age workers, so individuals 25 to 54. Seeing what funding opportunities are available that the state or your local areas can support or apply for, and encouraging them, providing whatever support you can. I hope that answers the question.
It does. What other questions would the board have for Carla?
My sound cut out. I'm not hearing anyone.
No, it sounds like you were thorough in your presentation. So, thank you very much. And anything that you are our inside connection. So anything that you think we should be taking advantage of that you don't see us taking advantage of, please shoot it our way, and we'll be seizing the opportunity.
Will do. I gotcha. Thanks, Chairman Barry.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, let's get ready for our fiscal update. Brian, come on up.
All right, can everybody hear me clearly? First time up here, so gotta make sure. All right, so I'm Brian Erdley, Director of Budgeting and Reporting, stepping in for Ivan today. He is a little sickly, so we wish him a speedy recovery. And I will be providing the fiscal and reporting update. So for a quick overview, we'll be reviewing our overall funding expenditures for the workforce system, workforce services, adult education, vocational rehabilitation, and also key performance indicators, our state KPIs, and also our federal performance. All right, so above is our overall authorized funding and expenditures. First, we listed our carryover funding for workforce services programs, that is WIO Title I, Adult Youth Dislocated Worker, and our employment services programs such as Wagner-Pizer and those related programs, as well as adult education, carrying over about $25 million into the previous fiscal year, which ended June 30th, 23. Then we have our allocations for workforce services programs at approximately $93 million. Adult education, $13.5 million. That reflects just the federal allotment for adult education. And then our vocational rehabilitation program, which shows $75 million for a total authorized amount of $207 million compared to last year. Relatively consistent funding levels. And in terms of expenditures for those respective programs, relatively consistent in expenditures. Of course, these numbers are still subject to change as we're doing year-end processing, but for the next board meeting, we will have finalized year-end figures. So for our funding allocation and expenditures for workforce services, we'll do a little bit of a deep dive. Primarily, our funding comes from WIO Title I funds. Adult Youth Dislocated Worker, about $43 million. Last year, we experienced a 9% decrease. This year, we have another decrease, and just referencing back to what Commissioner Thomas said, that is an existential threat that we are facing for workforce services, is that our single largest grant is decreasing from year to year. That is a threat, So one of our opportunities and things that we've done in response to that is we applied for 4 types of federal grants. We applied and been awarded an apprenticeship grant for about $700,000 going to the new year. Also applied for a workforce data quality initiative grant. Fortunately, we did not receive that, but that is recurring, and we may apply for that next year. The purpose of that is to promote and enhance our longitudinal data system so that we can map educational attainment to workforce outcomes. We also applied for a critical sector jobs quality grant, which is providing a deep analysis in Tennessee, particularly East Tennessee, for hospitality and tourism industry. And then lastly, we applied for a Quest National Dislocated Worker Grant for the amount of $5 million. The purpose is to release that funding to local boards if awarded so they can connect with employers and participants and provide the training necessary. So that is one thing we've done as a department in response to our declination in funding. And in addition to that, we also have received, as you see here, for $11.5 million for other programs. That is state funding. So in response to a declination in federal funding, we have to be creative, we have to expand our horizons and find alternative ways to find funding to continue workforce development, since we are at a inflection point where we know workforce development is needed more than ever. And then just as a quick overview, despite all that, we have $118 million in authorized funding last fiscal year. We spent about $82 million. These figures are subject to change as we are still doing year end, and that leaves a net position of approximately $36 million. A lot of this funding will be carried over into the next year. It's not like this $36 million will be returned to the federal government. We still have the opportunity to spend that into the next year. So, secondly, we have adult education. Again, these figures show just the federal allocation. And one thing that we've done excellently in the past year is we've increased our federal expenditures for adult education. As you can see, for the percent expended went up to about 96-97%, which is excellent. That is attributed to expansion to about 21 adult education providers this past year and into the new year. And in terms of adult education, you can also see that we've exceeded our total enrollments goal of 11,000 last year to 12,162. We intend to increase that going to the new year. And despite all of that, and despite the increase in enrollments, our cost per participant still roughly the same, so that means our participants are still receiving the same level of services. For vocational rehabilitation, I'll be remiss if I don't provide a little further detail regarding this to make sure that I clearly convey the differences in vocational rehabilitation funding compared to adult education or workforce services funding. How vocational rehabilitation funding is presented is that the authorized amount is equal to what was drawn down from the federal government at $75 million through the fiscal year. There are some variances with vocational rehabilitation. We had an interim meeting with our oversight committee a couple months ago where we did a deep dive in vocational rehabilitation. Kevin Wright was there, so was Brittany Pipkin. So they provide a lot of great detail on vocational rehabilitation, but as you can see from previous year, there has been an increase in expenditures. Next, we'll go into the total enrollments for participants served for our WIOA Title I programs, adult, dislocated worker, and youth. These are the total enrollments as of Q4, quarter ending June 30th, 2023 for the past program year. As you can see, our total enrollments have been consistent from quarter to quarter. So there is no considerable drop regarding that. So we're still engaged with the participants in Tennessee. Next, we'll get into state key performance indicators, something that is always a hot topic. This year, we've adhered to a less is more approach. So for KPIs, we had a reduction from 20 plus KPIs last year to 13 this year. All have been negotiated with the local areas and our appropriate program directors and team leads. So they have been engaged and they've been briefed on this. So we've determined from a programmatic level what KPIs should be tracked for this year. And the measures on the next slide largely are intended to track new and co-enrollments for participating programs. So here are the 13 KPIs that have been set for the new program year. For some, you can see what the target was last year for PY22. In the column adjacent to that, you'll see the target for the new program year, PY23. For several of the programs, we're hoping for an overall increase, particularly with justice-involved individuals, where we're hoping to double the target. And then there's been some discussion about a potential pilot program. So in addition to the state KPIs here for programs, we want a more macro level approach, and this is where we'd love input from the State Workforce Board. This was briefed on the Innovations Committee and the Oversight Committee. One such idea is a living wage attainment, where we would determine and track participants who've been touched by the workforce system, who've been enrolled upon exit. What is their wage attainment level? Are they in a position where they're economically self-sufficient? MIT has a living wage model, which is a great best practice that's been used across the state, across the country, in terms of determining and evaluating living wage. So that is something we would love input from the board to see if that's moving the needle in the right direction, if there are other additional macro level measures that we can do to provide analysis on the workforce system as a whole. Okay. And then for federal performance measures, as of Q4, program year 2022, Tennessee is passing all 18 federal performance negotiated measures. 17 of the 18 on the next slide you'll see are highlighted in green, which means we've exceeded our negotiated targets, which means 1 of 18 is below the negotiated target but exceeds the 90% threshold. So skip to the report card, which you see before you. The credential attainment for dislocated worker is in yellow. The negotiated target was 70.6%. Our actual is 67.3%. An important note to make here is for the feds to, as long as you're within 90% of the goal, you still pass. So we're still doing pretty well there. However, that could be subject to change, as that particular measure is one of our most lagged measures, in terms that is assessing the cohort who exited the program from January to December of 2021, see if they've attained a credential. And they have to attain a credential within 12 months after exit. And our WIRE team will also be doing a rerun of the data in October for federal performance. So that could be subject to change and increase up to the measure. So when we do this again in November, we could be at 18 of 18. And that's it. Are there any questions?
What questions do you have for Brian regarding the fiscal report? So going back to the first set of information, you were talking about the funding going down, right? Our single largest federal grant being decreased year over year, but that's because it's what the feds are allocating, not because we're not spending it as we should. Is that correct?
Correct. Commissioner Thomas referred to an antiquated model largely focused on unemployment. So we all know in the 21st century, unemployment is not the best measure to determine whether or not funding should be allocated to that area for workforce development. There's a lot of other factors, such as wage gaps, people are underemployed, things of that nature. So there's that, and also disadvantaged youth and adults. Those measures are factored in.
New business development.
New businesses. So it is an antiquated model. It's an opportunity during reauthorization to reevaluate and establish a model that works for the 21st century. Good.
And what can we as a board do to help get that changed?
That's a great question. Your support, any input from the board in terms of your personal experiences, what you all think might be the best way to determine how money should flow to a particular area for workforce development. Right now, it's largely unemployment, but there are gaps that you see from your own perspective that may be a better alternative to address how funding should be allocated. That'd be helpful, and we could communicate that to the federal government.
And Commissioner, I would imagine that your work then with the other states can influence that policy change as well. So thank you for that. And then back at our state, the 4 grants that you're applying for, is the sum of that additional funding equivalent to what we're losing?
Not quite. The sum of those were about $8 million, but it was for different funding sources. So this is where the encouragement of additional state dollars, where there is not as much hindrance from like federal government regulations,
Right.
that comes into play where we have more flexibility to provide the support to the different avenues that need it.
Right, because the disadvantage of those other 4 grants is that they're very specific in how they can be spent
Correct.
versus the other grants, so. All right, what other questions do you have?
Is it possible to get, you listed other programs and you indicated that the $11 million there was primarily state-based funding?
Yes.
Is there any, can we get some granularity on that and understand that a little bit better?
Yeah, we can certainly provide that. As of right now, that 11.5, about 9 million, which was dedicated for reentry programs. That's including the American Prison Data System tablet program, also Office of Reentry. And then in addition, the remaining 2 million was for our state apprenticeship program, but we can provide further detail if needed. Thank you very much.
Good. Okay, Commissioner, do you have a couple closing words before we end?
Yes, I'll be very brief. And Chris, you can bring up the photos. One of the things I omitted to say during my opening comments was around our summer youth employment program, which this board was extremely supportive of, and I really appreciate that. Please note, because this was a state-funded initiative, those funds aren't available to us until July 1st. So this year was really sort of a build-up year for us. We're looking for the momentum to really hit next summer when we feel like we can get more participants in the program. I know Mayor Pagriba is not here, but was a huge advocate and had about 35 or so, Marla, correct me if I'm wrong if you're still here, in Humphreys County. This is Montgomery County. Marla, I'm looking at you. And this is with Mayor Golden, right? And he actually has summer youth participants that worked in his office, and you can see him there working and mentoring and supporting that. So I just want the board to know this is a visual representation of the work that you're doing here in policy that's actually reflecting in community. And Marla, thank you for sharing the example of this. And I'm sure there are many more examples statewide, but I think every now and then it's good for us to come back to seeing a glimpse of the work that's really being done inside of this building. And so, Deborah, we hope next year that we can partner with the school systems the way we want to get more and more kids enrolled in summer youth. This is a program that I felt like our governor and General Assembly really got behind, but we want to go back to them and say we've spent every cent you've given us, and every child in Tennessee that wants to work is working. And so we hope we can come back to you with some more innovative ideas on how to expand the program, but just wanted you to have some idea of what's been done. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And our next meeting is scheduled for November 3rd. I'm confident you already have that on your calendar, but I would like to also tell you we are planning a strategy meeting that we'd like to schedule for the day before on November 2nd. And the strategy meeting, if you're able to attend that, is an opportunity for this board to get together. It's a great opportunity to get to know each other a little better. It gives a great opportunity for question and answer, a great opportunity for a little fuss and discuss as to what our priorities should be, making sure that we are working well with the other departments within the state and that we're all on the same page in achieving those governor objectives that we talked about earlier today. So if you would, go ahead and pencil that in for November 2nd. Eiler will send out more information on that moving forward. Otherwise, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. I heard that from Billy and second from Marshall, so I'm going to assume no one's going to negate that, and this meeting is adjourned.